Hi, welcome to my channel Mostly Knitting. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if you're new here, I'm Tash, and this is a weekly podcast where I talk mostly about the knitting that I've been doing during the week, and I also put out regular tutorials. So it's Wednesday the 4th of September, and I'm recording in Sydney, Australia. So I have one finished object this week, and I'm wearing it, and that is Magnolia Bloom by Camilla. It is a really beautiful, super warm sweater. It is knit out of, or at least I've knit this out of the Rerum Natura Ulysse, one strand of that, and two strands of Hedgehog Fibers Kidsilk Lace, which is a silk mohair blend. And so three strands together. So I just actually finished it this morning. It took me, after 43 days, I had to put it on pause when I ordered an extra skein of the Kidsilk lace. So I'll get into that in a minute, but I'll just tell you a little bit of the details about it. So I knit it on 6.5mm needles for the body and 5.5 for the ribbing. Which is like about a half a needle size down, because this yarn is a sport weight, and it was originally designed to be knit with 2 fingering and 2 mohair, so 4 strands. I think a lot of people have used 1 strand of DK and 2 strands of mohair, but I've used sport and 2 mohair. So for me, my gauge was a little bit tighter. The gauge is meant to be 12 stitches over 10 centimeters, and I was getting 14.5 stitches. So I knit the medium size, which is 113 centimeters, which is meant to be 44.5 inches, and mine turned out to be about 37 inches, which is about 5 inches of positive ease. So that feels really nice on the body. I've knit it to 12.5 inches under the arms and sleeves 17.5 inches. I knit it with what did I do? I did a tubular bind off for the hem and the cuffs, and that's a pretty deep cuff. It's about 2.5 inches. And I also I did a fold over. I think it is meant to be in the pattern. I did do the double fold over neckline and sewed it down. I really I love the whole design. It's meant to have balloon sleeves, as in like you don't taper at all and then you just do a rapid decrease. I don't know if that's a balloon sleeve or like it's sort of all, maybe, I don't know if that's called a balloon sleeve. Whatever it is, it's where you don't do any decreases except right at the cuff, and then you've got it sort of puffing out over the cuff. I actually did a tapered sleeve. Not necessarily, because once I ordered the extra mohair, I knew I wasn't going to run out of yarn, and I had plenty of the Ulysse. I think it was I just think I wanted that style. I didn't want a really puffy sleeve. So yeah, the design, like it's, a bit of work up here, but then the rest of it, very quick. The method that I used for the bobbles, I'll put a link up here and also in the down below. I used one that's pretty close to what she recommended in the pattern. I didn't use a crochet hook. I just found it, I think I just knit into the front and back of the stitch a few times and then passed them over. And that was pretty quick. It was actually pretty painless. So, and I quite like the bobbles. I've also done a tutorial on how to help them pop out a little bit, which I picked up from Taylor from... I've forgotten the name of her podcast. It'll come back to me. Yes, so it weighs 340 grams. I used, so the Kidsilk lace comes in 50-gram balls, and I used 3.5 balls. So I had 3 balls of this colour, or 3 skeins, and I had to order a 4th, and I ordered that from overseas, and they were very, very different. But because of the... because I was holding like one of these and one of these, I never actually had to go to completely 2 of these. I sort of faded in a little bit of, and of course I also had the Ulysse as well. So it sort of softened the blending. And so you can probably see, actually if I stand back, you can definitely see that it's more on that pinky side on the bottom, but hopefully it looks more like a fade and not one big jarring line. Certainly it looks, you can see it more on camera. In person, I don't think you can even tell at all. And I did the same kind of thing on the sleeves. So it definitely moves more from the purple into the pink as you go down the sweater. but not, hopefully not into one enormous, one enormous line. Sorry, it's almost a full house at the moment. I've got a lot of family members in the background, so there might be a bit of background noise. So I'll try and keep my volume up. So hopefully that's not too much of a distraction. Right. So, the other thing that I was going to mention. So when I said, I used just under 4 balls of the Ulysse, and that's only a 50-gram ball. And so I think the whole sweater turned out to be about 700 meters. When I looked at other people's projects on Ravelry, I thought it might have been more like 630, 640 meters. But obviously for me, it ended up being a bit more yarn. So I needed that extra ball. So I have 27 grams left of this, sort of maybe about 20 and 7. And I have 2 balls of the Ulysse. So I'm thinking maybe, not double-stranded, but maybe an Oslo hat with mohair. Even though that's normally a fingering weight with a mohair, and this would be a sport with a mohair, and I'd only use 1 strand of mohair, I could just cast on a few less stitches, and maybe this could be on the inside of the hat, and then this one on the outside. Just thinking that might be a way to use up some of the leftover yarn. So I've got I've got 2 balls and a bit more left of the Ulysse. That would certainly use up maybe that amount for a hat. And obviously I like the color combination. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about for the leftovers. As for the other extra ball, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll use it for swatches or something, or maybe for just another basic hat, like a baker's hat or something. Right, but anyway, I try not to worry too much about leftovers once I've just finished a project, but it's kind of nice to have something in mind. I'm actually there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm going to take it off because it's quite warm here now. It's about 21 degrees Celsius. It's just started spring. We say spring starts on the 1st of September, and it's the 4th now. So it's officially spring for us, and it's definitely warmed up. Like I think tomorrow it's meant to be, so 21 degrees Celsius is about 70 Fahrenheit, but tomorrow is meant to be like 28 degrees Celsius, and then I think maybe even 30 on Friday. So it definitely feels like we've jumped into summer. So, but it was cold this morning. It was only 5 degrees Celsius this morning. So there's still a place for this in my wardrobe, at least early in the morning. But the thing that I wanted to mention, I think it was Danny who suggested when I was doing my alternating, so what I was doing was I had 1 strand of the Ulysse and 2 of, I'll get into it. I had 1 of this and then 2 of these, and then alternated with 1, 1, 1, and then 1 and 2. So basically I was switching 1 strand of this with 1 strand of this every other row. And Danny suggested using the yarn forward method, and I think there's a few tutorials on it, but I watched the one from Birch and Lily that she suggested. And yeah, it was actually really helpful because I think you might have a few little tension issues if you're moving all of the yarn, but because I was only moving 1 strand, so I'll put a link to that video because it was actually it's quite a good technique, and I have used it before, I just forgotten about it. So I used it on the second sleeve. So I'll see if I can find it. Oh, I haven't woven in my ends. Naughty girl. I've woven in the ones that were like on the cuff and like those ends and the ones underneath the sleeves. But the ones that are just randomly throughout the sweater, because I actually only just finished it this morning. Let me see. I'll see if I can find the end where... Yep, okay, so this is the one that I alternated. This is on the inside. That's the one that I alternated with the yarn forward method. And you see, so that's where I joined, I think I joined the yarn. Maybe that's it. Yeah, that's where I joined the yarn. And you can't see, there it is. That's where I joined the yarn. And you can't see any kind of yarn coming up here. But on the other one, I did it where you just sort of move the yarn. Let me see if you can see it. I did quite like the yarn forward method. So, and I think perhaps if you were using it for the whole, it wasn't just 1 strand out of 3. Anyway, let me see. On the inside of the sleeves, I don't think you can see. Now, I haven't blocked it because I only just finished this morning. But yeah, I think it looks okay. That's 1 sleeve. I don't know that you can tell the difference on the outside from either of them. There's probably a little bit of tension difference there just around that stitch, but I'm sure blocking will sort that out. Anyway, that's Magnolia Bloom. I'm going to keep it off because it is warm, but really love it. I'll definitely be wearing it at least in the mornings at the moment, and then certainly next winter it will come in high rotation. So the next segment that I want to do is Friend from the Vault. This is where I show a knit that I made earlier that I really like and wear a lot, and is sort of a regular part of my wardrobe. So this project is, I don't know if you say Sothia or Sothia, Sothia, and it's by Rowan Ulrich. And I'll just say it's a really big 2-color shawl, so you can see how big it is. So it's symmetrical along here, and it's 2 colors. So I'll show you the 2. It's got this sort of garter eyelet, and then a like a ribbed fringe. Yep. So that is knit with Madelinetosh Tosh Merino Light. In this lighter color is Gossamer, and the darker color is Victorian Gothic. And it's a really, obviously you can see a lovely large shawl. It used just over 1.5 skeins of the Victorian Gothic and just under half a skein of the Gossamer. So I link to all of my, any project that I talk about, I link to my Ravelry page, where I have pretty much almost everything. I have the details of the amount of yarn that I used, and if there was any specific things, because I weigh my yarn at the start and end of a project. So it's actually, if it's really cold, you actually get some nice coverage from it, and you can see the ruffle there. But then I also just wear it similar to I wear my other ones, where I just turn it around like a big, and there's a lot of volume here, but like really, I think it's really, really pretty, because you sort of, the way you see this little garter eyelet and the stripes. And you can see there's a lot of purple in the, I don't know if you can see that, it's quite a lot of undertones or overtones, I don't know which it is, but certainly some purple in it. And it goes with, and the Gossamer actually is kind of like a light lavender as well. So I'm really feeling the lavender at the moment. Yes, so this I made in 2011, and I made it, it's quite a lot of knitting. It's over 2, in terms of quantity, over 2 full skeins of fingering weight yarn, but I made it in 4 weeks, which makes me think maybe I was a bit more monogamous back in 2011. But it certainly has worn up really well, worn really well, because what's that? That is 13 years old, and it does get worn quite a lot. And so you'll probably see a lot of my friends from the vault are Tosh Merino Light. And when I do my stash video, you'll see a lot of leftover balls of Tosh Merino Light, because I've used a lot of colours and made it in a lot of projects, because it's a beautiful yarn. It's a single ply fingering weight. The colours are really beautiful, and it wears well. It doesn't pill. I've used it for dresses and shawls and jumpers and tops. And because it's a 4-ply fingering, I can wear it in a lot of seasons. It's very lightweight. And wool's just wonderful to work with. So, and it is actually superwash. But yeah, I use it for colour work as well, which is really nice. So that's my friend from the vault, Sothia. And yeah, I love it. It's just a really lovely shawl. So I'm up to my works in progress, and I've got one on to show you. I've just put it on an extension cord. This is Jupiter Crop by Caitlin Hunter, and I'm knitting it out of the recommended yarn and the recommended colours, which is Vovo by Rosa Pomar. And I'm working down the yoke. I'm up to row 40, and I've got another 15 rows to go. And I'm working on these 2 colours here, and that's it's just these 2 colours for the rest of the yoke. So 15 more rows. I haven't blocked it or anything on the needles, but I probably will before I separate for the sleeves. I'll get to that point and then I'll block it. So these are the other 2 colours up here, and then this is the one that's the main colour. And I only have the 1 ball of this. It is possible to lengthen the body, but I'll be limited by however much I have of this brown yarn. because it is meant to be a crop sweater, but I might want it a tiny bit longer, but we'll just see how I go with what's left of that. So I'm knitting it on I used a 3.5 millimeter needle for the ribbing, and I'm using a 4 millimeter needle for the body, which is one needle size up. I think one of the things that I'm a bit concerned about that I mentioned last week was how this the ribbing is sticking up. And I was thinking that maybe it was to do with the cast on that I used for the tubular cast on, Judy's Magic cast on, but I'm just not sure. What I'm going to do is when I block it, see, I don't know that blocking it's really even going to fix that. Yeah, so I might have to put a needle through the right leg of all of the stitches underneath the ribbing. I don't think I'd need to go past the short rows. I think I can probably just do it underneath the ribbing and cut off the ribbing and then re-knit the ribbing. Probably still use a 3.5. Well, I'll either use a 3.5 or maybe a 3.25 and just use a tubular bind off, because that's just flaring and I don't like that. So yep, so I'm just really liking how it's going, and I'm really liking the colors. I think it's really pretty. But I'm just conscious that I'm probably going to have to, I think I've got plenty of this yarn, but I don't think that's going to be a problem that I have to rip that off, because I'll have to I think just completely trash that yarn, and it's only 4 rows of ribbing. It's not a lot. Other than that, I think it's coming along well. I only have one other sweater work in progress at the moment, and that is Fjolla by Isabell Kraemer, and I'm knitting this out of Myak Myak Lace Baby Yak in the colourway Oatmeal, and I went one needle size up for this as well. I'm knitting this on a 4 millimeter needle, and I am knitting the 35 3/4 inch size, but my gauge is a tiny bit tighter, and my unblocked gauge of this sweater, it's at 33 inches. So that's 1 inch of positive ease for me, which I think is fine. And maybe when I block it, it might end up being, let's say 34 inches. And that would be about 2 inches of positive ease. So it's a really beautiful lace design, just a little one here. And then there's going to be lace all down the sleeves. So this is all I've got. You're holding the yarn double. This is all I have left of the first 2 balls. I've got to be careful. I'm going to end up, because they're sort of at the almost at the end, they're going to end up getting tangled if I'm not careful. Sometimes when it gets to this point, I actually just wind them up into a little ball, because that could end up being a real mess if I'm not, if I don't do that. So I think I'm going to do that before I knit any more on it. Once I've finished this, I think I will do the sleeves, because I do quite like, I'm definitely going to have plenty of yarn. I've got 3 more balls, and so I'm going to, and I'm using the recommended yarn, and I know that should be, and I think you needed 5 skeins, maybe even not just for the first size, but for the first few sizes. So we should be fine there. But I think I will do the sleeves, and then I'll come back and work. I quite like when I finish the body that the whole thing is done. So I think when I finish this much, I might block it just to sort of see how it's going, and then I'll work the sleeves and then down the body. It is, even though the sleeves have this lace detail, it's a 6-row repeat. It's really easy to memorize, and I find with something like that, it actually makes it even easier for working out what row you're on, because you can see, oh right, yeah, I'm on 4, and it's this many sections of the lace or whatever. So I find it a bit easier actually when it's not just stockinette and I have to sit there and count every single row. So that's Fjolla by Isabell Kraemer. Because that's so easy, it's practically just stockinette. The body is certainly going to be stockinette for the rest of the way, and maybe some ribbing at the bottom. Oh, this is what I was going to mention. Oh yeah, just make sure that's not clanking. I think I hadn't done this last week. I picked up the stitches for the neckline, and I did a 1x1 rib, and I did a tubular bind off, because I often do that for a 1x1 rib. But when I think about it, I don't think that necessarily adds anything. I think it's okay. And I was really happy I did the tubular bind off for Magnolia Bloom. I really liked it in that. But for this, I actually think just a regular, bind off in pattern is would have been fine. In fact, probably even preferable. So I'm going to do that for the cuffs and the bottom. I don't know that I'll bother changing that because I don't hate it, but I just don't think, like, I think it actually would be better just with a nice bind off braid, to be honest, with this particular yarn. If I could be bothered, I'll come back and rip it out, because obviously it's not just the sewn bind off. I have to undo the sewing. I also have to undo 2 setup rows, and then maybe re-knit another, you know, just to get the depth, re-knit another row, and then bind off. So that's a bit of work for something that could be perfectly wearable. So, and I'm just not sure that I could be bothered. Anyway, that's so that's my own second work in progress. I was going to cast on another sweater, but I'll talk about that in plans. I was sort of focused on finishing Magnolia Bloom, so before the weather warmed up too much, but I think I almost missed my boat there this season. Right, so I'm going to move on to my smaller works in progress. I forgot to mention that Fjolla has been on the needles for 23 days, so just over 3 weeks, but I think I'm making pretty good progress on that, especially now it's just going to be mostly stockinette. So another work in progress that I have is My Baker's Hat by EM Knits. This has been on the needles for 10 days. It's a free pattern for worsted yarn, but you could modify pretty much with any yarn. It's a hat pattern. I'm using this Amirisu worsted hand dyed that I picked up in Japan. I just had the one skein. And so I've knit the 5 inches of 1x1 ribbing, and then you're meant to knit another 3.5 inches of stockinette. I think I was walking and I overshot it a little bit, and maybe it's 3 and 3.75 inches, but what's a quarter of an inch between friends? It's a hat, right? It's a quarter of an inch is not going to be a big deal in length, especially because I didn't do the turning row. So in the pattern she suggests doing a knit row at about 3 inches, so that's where you fold it, but I felt then that would lock me into that length, and I don't know, I just didn't feel a need to do that. So, and I've just started, so when I realized, I just did my first row of decreases, and it's a pretty standard sort of, you decrease 8 stitches every other round, and you do it at these 4 points with 1 stitch in between. So there's some, like knit 2 together, slip knits. So I don't know if I can pop it on for you, whether there's any value in that, but let me see. This is kind of the idea, I guess. So I'm knitting it on a 4mm needle, but I did Judy's Magic cast on a 4.5mm needle, which is stretchy but is also pretty stable, I guess. So anyway, I think it's like I'm just at the decreases part. I'm probably going to have it down a little bit more, like as in further down a bit, because I don't know how many rows. It's probably going to have to be down a little bit more because I've got quite a few decreases still to do. But it's coming out nicely, and I guess because you fold it over, so even though how sometimes I talk about knitting 1x1 ribbing inside out, well, if you don't knit it inside out, you just knit it regular. When you fold that up, that is the inside out version there. So that just, it's not necessarily like one's better than the other, but the knit stitches are a little bit smaller on the reverse side as opposed to this side. Now, on Magnolia Bloom, on those cuffs, I didn't knit those inside out because I actually wanted at least for the bottom and the sleeve cuffs, I kind of wanted the larger knit stitches. Whereas for this one here, I think it actually looks a little bit nicer to have that version over that version on the outside. Because that one sort of has the larger knit stitches versus the smaller ones. Anyway, I think it looks quite nice. And I do like the tubular cast on for 1x1 ribbing for a hat. Whatever version you do, it just has a nice finish for a 1x1 rib. But obviously on Fjolla, like there was no need for it, and I actually think it looked better without it. So it's not like one thing is better for everything. It just depends on the pattern, depends on the yarn. Yes. Now the only other small works in progress that I have, excuse me, reaching. Let's see. Everything's getting tangled. Apologies. Right, so my last 2 little works in progress, they actually haven't seen any. Look at this. this is not good. I'm going to undo. Okay, so my small works in progress are the Skimmer socks revisited by Sheila Stromberg. This is one that I have finished, and I have the second one on the needles. I haven't made any progress from last week, but this is Sanders Garn 4008. Sanders Garn Sunday in the colorway 4008, and I think this one weighs about just under 15 grams. I have a US 9 sneaker size foot. So like if I go to buy sneakers in the US, I buy a US 9, or if I buy them in Australia, because it's the same sizing, well, at least we use the same sizing for sneakers here, a US 9. And I use 64 stitches, and that used for this yarn just under 15 grams. And so I'm working my way along the second one, but I haven't done any this week because I've been taking the baker's hat for walking knitting. And I cast on another one because that one was at an awkward point and I wanted to go for a walk. So this is Madelinetosh sock in the colorway Earl Grey. So I kind of want to get these off the needles. I've got other things in mind for my walking knitting rather than socks at the moment. But I sort of need to force myself to work on these. Like, I like the pattern. I just have quite a few of them already now, and I don't really need any more. They're just sort of like a project to take with me when I go for a walk, right? So anyway, that's my last two works in progress. Oh, I mentioned last week about knitting, wearing them inside out, and a few people mentioned that actually wearing it with the knit stitches on the sole of your foot has a name. It's called a princess sole, kind of like, I guess, the Princess and the Pea idea. And there are some people have actually, obviously it doesn't really matter that much if you turn something like this inside out, because it's not going to, there's no patterning and it's not all the way up your foot, and it's a no-show sock. But there are, somebody mentioned there was a pattern that's actually written where you actually just, or you could do it yourself, you just switch when you're coming to the sole of the foot, switch to reverse stockinette, for the outside, so that you've got like the nice bed of knit stitches underneath your feet. So something to think about, and either the pattern could be written that way or you could just change it up yourself. Right, so that's it for my works in progress. So I'm up to acquisitions and plans, and I didn't cast on anything new last week, so I have quite a few plans in store for this week coming up. And so just for starting with acquisitions, I thought I'd mention a couple of patterns that were gifted to me this week. Rhonda gave me the Freestyle Shirt by Paula Strict, which is made out of the pattern uses a sport weight cotton at a 24 stitch gauge. So thank you very much, Rhonda. That one really caught my eye, and I have quite a lot of cotton stash, so I'm really hoping that I can find some stash in yarn for that one. And the other pattern that was gifted to me was the Lovebird sweater. Mindy gifted me that one, and that's by Kate Oates. That's a really lovely, it's knit as a top, but you could turn it into a sweater if you wanted. So it's knit on a sport weight gauge. I think that pattern came out quite a while ago, and it's certainly been in my favourites or queue for a long time. It's just got this really beautiful Lovebird. So it's a Fair Isle knit on a sport weight gauge. Using sport weight yarn, and the gauge is 26 stitches. The yarn actually that was used is Spin Cycle, which is sort of probably more like a fingering weight, the dyed in the wool. Technically it's a sport weight, but I think it sort of knits up a bit more like maybe a heavy fingering. Certainly at a 20 stitch gauge, that sort of sounds a bit, more like fingering. So it's knit with, the colour work is like the dyed in the wool and then a different yarn, but still a sport weight wool yarn for the body. So yeah, that one just, thank you very much, Mindy. That one, I have to have a look for stash for that one. I just think it's really pretty, but I want to be a bit thoughtful about the colours in that one. So yes, and I do have some Spin Cycle. I'm not sure, I might have a Spin Cycle that might actually work for that, so I'll have to have a bit of a look. So I also bought some yarn this week on D-Stash. So somebody asked me about D-Stash, and there are different ways that you can buy yarn from someone else's stash, and I guess we just call that D-Stash. But on Ravelry, I'm a member of the Australian Knitters Group, and there's a thread there where people just post in the thread yarn that they want to sell, what price they want to sell it at, and then you just communicate back and forth with them. So I bought some, that's where I mostly buy D-Stash yarn. I know people can buy it off Instagram. I don't really, maybe I'm just not following people who D-Stash that much. because I don't generally see a lot of it. But anyway, this is what I got, and it's actually sitting up here. So I got 2 skeins of this orange flower, Merino Cashmere Silk Sport, and it's this beautiful tonal grey. And I thought, as soon as I saw this, I thought this would be so good for the Selwood Tee by Caitlin Hunter. So Kay gave me that pattern just, I think, last week. That is actually knit out of a sport weight yarn, and I think it uses 3 skeins, but maybe only just into the 3rd skein, and this has a little bit more yardage. So it is bottom up, so I'll have to be a little bit careful, but it's got such a pretty lace pattern. So yeah, I think that's going to be, now I think about it, bottom up makes me a bit scared when I don't have any more yarn, but I'll work it out. I can work out, I can do the math. I just have to make sure I'm conscious of when I'm knitting the length. So, and this is so lovely and soft and squishy. So I got that. Then I also, from the same seller, she was selling this, she had for sale a ballet slippers kit, but when I messaged her, she'd already sold that one, but she did say she had one left that had all of the colours except the last one. So that's still 5 skeins, and it was, on a significant, often when you buy yarn on D-Stash, it's, significantly discounted because it's from someone else's stash and they're just trying to recoup some of the costs. And yeah, so that is the ballet slippers. Now this is the slightly different, I'll just show you actually, I already had a ballet slippers, the reason I knew I liked this yarn, I'd already made the ebb dress out of the ballet slippers yarn. I've shown that one before, but just in case you haven't seen it, it's the ebb dress that was by Olga Borak-Felian, and she uses, I think, loft, Brooklyn tweed loft, and 2 strands of that held together, but I just used this DK weight yarn. So this is DK twist, and this yarn is a slightly different base. It's still DK, but it's their limited edition super soft DK. So probably not that different. Probably doesn't knit to that different a gauge. I don't actually have a plan for this in mind, but when I look at it, I think this would make a really beautiful baby blanket. So I don't know anyone who's having a baby at the moment, but somebody will eventually. So yeah, anyway, it's just going to go into stash, but I do think I would use them together. Like obviously I could knit them individually for hats, but I just think they do work so beautifully together that it might be a really nice, just a nice block striped baby blanket. So 5 skeins of DK weight yarn, 500 grams, that should be enough for a baby blanket. So I'll probably just put that into stash and wait until someone has a baby. So I got that, and the other yarn that I got was this Newton yarn in the colourway Gateway. So I got 4, I think they're called plates of this. Now I don't know if you're picking it up, but it actually has a lot of like purples undertones in it, and I thought that might go really nicely with some other Newton yarn that I have in stash, this really lovely light pink colour. I just thought they looked really nice, and I don't know what I'm going to make. I have in mind like the Roots and Shoots sweater maybe, and that definitely uses a contrast colour. I just thought they looked really, really nice together. Now I have 3 sweater quantities of Newton yarn, and I haven't knit with any of it. So I have to remedy that. So that will be kind of probably one of my, plans, or at least in mind. Probably not for, certainly like we're coming into summer here in Australia, but maybe for next winter, I want to make sure that I have at least 1 sweater of this actually worked up. Like I don't have to knit with stash, but I certainly don't want to keep acquiring yarn when I haven't knit with that base at all. I think I'm going to like it, but I may find myself in a position where I'm like, actually I hate this. I know it's very fragile, and I'm going to have to I think people, if they knit with it double, they ball it up first, or I might knit with it with a mohair. That might make it a little bit easier to knit with, but I am really excited to use it. So anyway, that's my, I don't have an actual plan for this one in mind, but I am thinking these 2 might be nice together. Right, so that's my acquisitions. And I did make another purchase from Needles and Wool. I have already talked about this in the past, and I already mentioned I wanted to buy it. It hasn't arrived yet. Needles and Wool, and I think they might still have a sale on, because they're on holidays until the 6th of September, so they said that no yarn was going to get shipped until then, so they gave 10% off, except for the drops yarn, which was already on sale. So I bought the Cardiff Cashmere in the Nero, I think it's called Nero, the black colorway, because I wanted to use that for poppy tea. I want to make that again in a black, because so I've got a really nice lightweight, soft black sweater that I can wear with lots of things for work. So I bought 7 balls of that. So obviously they haven't even shipped that yet, so it certainly hasn't arrived. But the other thing that when I saw that they had Drops yarn on sale, I thought I'll try the Drops silk mohair for instant crush. So I got some, I won't show you what I got. Oh, maybe I'll just put a little picture up here of the colours that I got. And yeah, I'll show you that like in person on camera when it arrives. So I ordered that, and then afterwards I saw that Magpie Fibres was having a 25% off sale. So I could have just ordered more, but I was like, that's silly. I haven't even made one yet. And, you know, yarn stores always have sales, right? They come up again and again. So I was like, okay, I missed this sale. I can miss a sale, you know, I'm allowed. I did also notice that lots of yarn stores were having, like, I guess, fall sales, you know, if they're in the Northern Hemisphere. So anyway, I did say that sale is over now, so sorry if you missed it too, but I'm sure a lot of people ordered from it. 25% off is a really good amount, percentage off for yarn. So another time, if I make this instant crush and I really like it, then maybe next time it goes on sale, I'll, you know, have that in mind. Right, so I've got a couple more plans. I'll just grab my swatches. So just continuing on with my plans, I do think I might start the Selwood tee now that I actually have yarn for it. But the other ones that I've been swatching for, and I do want to start, one is the Shore tee. So that is by Anne Wenzel, and I'm going to be using Alpaca 1 and Trio 2, which is the recommended yarn in the pattern. And these are the 2 colours that were held together for the sample that's in the photos. So I've done quite a bit of swatching on that. So this was on a 3mm needle, which is what was recommended. And then the next one is 3.25. And then I actually blocked the whole thing. This top one was a 3.5. And I think I like the 3.25 fabric the best. This one's perhaps just a little bit open, whereas yeah, I think I like this one. And so I'm going to cast that on for Shore this week. For sure, haha, get it? Shore tee. I'm definitely going to cast that one on. And the smallest size is a 37-inch bust. So even if my gauge is a bit tighter, which I think it might be a little bit, it still should have some positive ease. It may just not be. 37 inches would be 5 inches of positive ease. I might have a bit more like, you know, 2 or 3 with my gauge, which is a tiny bit tighter. So the gauge on the pattern is 21 stitches, and I'm getting more like 23. So anyway, I think that's going to be really nice. And I think it'll be a really nice work top. I had a read of the pattern, and I'm pretty sure with this one, like it's got set-in sleeves, and you actually pick up the stitches and knit short rows for the sleeve cap, which I really like that. I really like that method of doing sleeves for a top-down set-in sleeve sweater. So I'm looking forward to starting that one. And I still haven't started the Peacock tee yet. I have 1 ball already wound up of the Cascade Ultra Pima, and that is going to get started. So I reckon I might actually start 2 new sweaters or at least tops, I guess, this week. 3 if you count Selwood tee. Or maybe I shouldn't cast on 3. 2 out of those 3. I'll aim for that. The other thing that I was thinking about is I'll probably finish that baker's hat this week. I'd like to make some progress on those skimmer socks, because I'm thinking for walking knitting, maybe just doing more hats and maybe even some dishcloths. So I quite like dishcloths in the kitchen, and they're also really nice for gifting, like the ones that I've given my mum, she always uses, and they're just then you can just chuck them in the washing machine if they get a bit smelly, and they can go in the dryer. So I have quite a bit of cotton yarn from Bendigo Woolen Mills in stash, so I think I might actually make that some of my walking knitting, because then there's no pattern at all. Like I just knit garter stitch for them. or really, really basic pattern I don't have to worry about. Like even with hats sometimes, like with the baker's hat, I was like, I went too far and I should have been decreasing and I didn't have a tape measure with me. So maybe hats are generally pretty good for most of it, at least once I get to and then even at the end when I get to the decreases, although I do have to switch to a magic lube, but I can do that when I'm walking. But also dishcloths, I think I might actually do a little bit of that. The other thing that I was thinking about is that I kind of feel like I need a shawl on the needles. I would like a largish project that is not a sweater, because with a sweater you're always going to get to a point where you're like, okay, I need to try that on, or I need to check something, or check for fit, or check my gauge, or something or another. So I think I'd like and with a shawl, it's actually a pretty substantially sized project, but you don't have to worry about shaping and you just follow the pattern. So I'm thinking maybe I need to have a look through Stash, but I did just buy Pure Joy, but maybe I just have to have I might do it based on what Stash I have, because I'm happy to do a repeat knit of a shawl that I've already made, but I wouldn't mind making Pure Joy. So anyway, that's just something that I'm thinking about whether I cast it on this week or not, but it is an upcoming plan. So I'm up to what has caught my eye. A few things have caught my eye this week, and one of them is the Nice Top by Anne Wenzel, and that's knit with 2 yarns held together. The Alpaca one, which is a lace weight alpaca, they're both Isia yarns, and the other one is Hoare Organic, which is a sport weight linen. So that's got a 19 stitch gauge, and it just looks really pretty. It's got like a kind of, I don't know, I just like where when you change the colours you have this sort of like almost a bit of a jagged effect at the spots where you, I don't know whether that's, I actually haven't even really looked, whether it's slip stitches or whether it's colour work there. But yeah, it caught my eye and I really liked it. So that was one. The other one is another Anne Wenzel pattern, and that is the Spot Sweater. And the reason I think it caught my eye is there's a sweater version and the cardigan version is in testing at the moment. When I took a look at the sweater, which I really like, and I do tend to wear more sweaters, the gauge was really interesting. It's a 22 stitch and 21 row gauge. Now normally your row gauge is larger as a number than your stitch gauge, so that was unusual. So it's 2 colors, and it uses one of the samples uses 3 strands of mohair for one of the colors, and the contrast color is just 1 fingering weight. So it made me curious, right? I haven't bought the pattern, but I'm curious as to exactly what the stitch, like how you get a 22 stitch and 21 row gauge, exactly how that works. So I'm curious to and I just really like how it looks too. It looks really beautiful, and a lot of the versions that I've seen on Ravelry are really pretty. So that's the Spot Sweater, and there will be a cardigan version coming up soon. And the last sweater that caught my eye is actually a cardigan Chunky Moulin by Lindholm Samso, and that is knit at an 18 stitch gauge with a DK weight yarn and a mohair, so sort of similar to the champagne cardigan, I guess. So that one caught my eye. I just thought it looked really nice. And the other thing that I just wanted to mention, because this is like I was talking about it last week in what has caught my eye, Marie Green's The Joy of Yarn, about organising your stash. So I haven't bought the book yet. I do still plan to. It's just been a bit of a busy week at work, and I've been doing other stuff as well. So, but I do plan to buy that book and use that as a bit of a, a bit of a guide for me before I start doing organising my stash, which I will record and I'll put up when I'm away. So I'm not away until the end of September. We're going to Bali in the sort of the first couple of weeks of October. We leave on the 27th of September, which is the last day of school, and we're gone for 2 weeks then. So I think when I'm away in those 2 weeks, I'll put up maybe the Q&A video, I'll record that, and a stash video, so that there's a couple in those 2 weeks while I'm away, and then back to normal when I get back. I'm sure I'll have lots of knitting, because I plan to do a lot of knitting by the pool there. Right, so that's it for what has caught my eye. I'm up to Hidden Basket of Whips. So last week I showed a crochet, crochet project that I pulled out of my Hidden Basket of Whips. So I actually did work on it this week. I did 1 round, and I thought that this here was some kind of like treble type stitch, but because I'm holding, it looks like that because I've got 3 strands of yarn. It's actually just, I don't even know what this stitch is called, and I know it's got a different name in Australia versus versus the US, but I'm going to, I feel like I'm such a non-crocheter that I have kind of no idea what I'm talking about, basically. But I do know how to do a few things, and I can actually, like, I've crocheted whole king-size blankets, right? So I can definitely crochet, but I just, once I get the stitch down, I'm like, okay, that's what I'm doing. So all I do for this here is I'd love to know if someone can tell me what this is. I go in and grab the yarn, and then I grab some more yarn and pull through 2. So that's all I'm doing. So in and grab the yarn, and then wrap the yarn and pull through 2. Whatever that is, that's what I'm doing, at least on the top here. And so this is going to be a bit of like a basket, sort of, it's meant to be. I don't know how it's going to actually stand up. That's the base, and then I did this kind of, I can't even remember doing this. Like I'm pretty sure I didn't even create a project page on Ravelry for this, and I usually do that for everything. So I don't know when I did it, I don't know what I did, but I obviously did something center out, and I probably followed somebody's tutorial or a pattern somewhere, I didn't make it up. And then I did this kind of braid thing, I don't even know what that is. This is a 10mm hook, and then now I'm just working that stitch all the way around up to make a basket. And I'm probably going to have to use some kind of, you can see how floppy it is, right? I'm probably going to have to use some kind of stiffener to have it sit up, but that's meant to be the idea, is that it's going to sit like up like that. So I'm crocheting this out of, this is the ball that I have 3 strands of Rowan All Seasons Cotton that I over dyed in this brown colour, and I've got it sort of all wound up in a ball, which I wouldn't normally recommend. I'd normally have from 3 different balls, but for some reason maybe I started something and unwound it. Anyway, this week, actually just this morning, because I'd only just did a few like during the week to just try to work out, you know how you kind of unravel and try to work out what was I doing, and as I was unraveling I was like, oh okay, I think I figured out what I was doing. I weighed this ball to see how much it weighed. I think it weighed about 270 grams, and then I did 1 crochet around. It was only like 80 stitches. Do they even call them stitches in crochet? I don't know. Anyway, 80 slots to go into, and it took me 7 minutes to go around. It was hard on my hands though, like it was hard just doing 1 round, but that used 17 grams. So if I divide with what I had left by 17, that was only like 15 rows. So if it only took me 7 minutes to do one row, and I've only got 15 to go, that's like not even 2 hours of crochet. So, and I certainly couldn't do it all in one sitting, but that's all I'd have is 2 hours of actual crocheting to finish this. So I'm going to commit to doing, maybe I'd get it done in a week if I just did 2 a day. So I think I'm going to finish this, and then I'll see, like, at least I'll crochet to the rest of this ball, and then I'll try and figure out how I can make it sturdy, whether I sew some kind of like liner or I use some kind of stiffener. I've never done anything like that. So if anyone has any recommendations, I think it'll be nice. Like I like having baskets around the house with like my projects or my yarn in it. So yeah, that's, I'm going to do, I don't know if you've been watching for a while, you may have noticed that I don't give up on things easily. I usually push through with a project unless I'm absolutely sure that this could fit nobody ever, or nor would anybody ever want to wear this, or this is completely unusable. I usually finish stuff. There's very few things that I frog. I have done it. I have frogged whole garments before, but not very often. So usually I try to think maybe somebody could wear it, or maybe somebody would like it, or it might fit somebody. Anyway, I'm hoping that crochet basket actually turns into something functional, because I think it'd be really nice. Like I really like this color. Like I just think that's a really nice chocolatey brown for the house. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. What else am I up to? So I'm up to Knitter's Bag of Tricks, my workbook swatching. So I only just started a swatch because I wanted to try to figure out what yarn to use. So I'm working my way, I'll just get into it. This is Paddy Lyon's Knitting Bag of Tricks, the official workbook. So I don't think this is available for sale until October, which isn't long away, maybe another month. But the publishing company, David and Charles, sent it to me along with it's an accompaniment to this book, which has been out for a couple of years. I think you can actually at least pre-order both of these together from Paddy's website. I already had this on ebook that I purchased myself, but then they sent these two together. And I just really like the idea of working through this book where you sort of work through and you create swatches and there's exercises. Now, I've been knitting for a really long time, so, you know, there could be thought that you're like, well, this is going to be a bit remedial for me. But actually, I just think sometimes I just race into the next project and I forget techniques that I like or had learnt and then forgot about when I was going to use for something. So I thought, you know what, I just kind of like this. I like the systematic approach. So I've only just started. This is the first swatch where I'm just going to poke myself in the eye there, where you knit, you start with like garter where you knit every row and then you purl every row and just see if there's a bit of a difference. Then you do some stockinette, then some ribbing, then some seed stitch. Now, she does mention to use a non-superwash wool. So I was trying to figure out what wool would I be willing to sacrifice for a swatch, because I love my leftovers and sometimes I hold on to my leftovers because I'm waiting for the perfect project for those, like the perfect Fair Isle colour work where that's the exact right colour, and if I had wasted it on something else. Anyway, it's a bit silly. But this is the Peer Gynt by Sanduskarn, and I used this for my storm sweater, and I had about 30 grams left. Now, the only thing that I noticed in the book is that Paddy doesn't actually mention how much yarn you need for the swatch. She just says use non-superwash wool. So I figured 30 grams is probably enough. And I even have a swatch that I made, here it is, that I made for the storm sweater that I could unravel if I needed. But I think that's going to be fine. I do need to use this swatch for later in the book. I think maybe another lesson 6 or something. Anyway, I've only just started it and I'm on the knit garter. So I just think this will be quite interesting for me to do this swatch and then, just notice if there is like sort of in an empirical way any difference in my purling, like what does my purling garter look like? That would definitely be sort of information for me as to whether I do purl, like my tension in purling, is that different to my knitting? Because I do find often I swatch flat, even if it is an in the round garment, because I have felt like most of the time and for most yarns, my gauge is pretty much the same, whether it's in the round or flat. But it'll be interesting to see, at least with wool, doesn't necessarily transfer to everything else, but at least with wool, is that actually accurate? Anyway, so I've just started that. I'm happy to have found that yarn, because that's part of the problem too with, a growing stash is like, I know I've got 30 grams of this somewhere, but where? And I think that was one of the questions in my question and answer that I have to address is like, oh, you said that you had something that had a hole and it needed fixing, like then you made it 10 years ago. How do you find that yarn? So I do have all of my yarn, and it is reasonably organized. It could be better organized, but I've noticed in myself that I'm a bit of a yarn whisperer in that I can look at a yarn and usually pretty quickly work out what the base is, and it's probably to do with, I've made it. I can recognize that was that yarn base in that colorway and I made it for that sweater, even though, like you'll see when you see my stash yarn, like my yarn stash, including my leftovers, I've been knitting for a long time. I have a lot of stash and a lot of leftovers. So, but I'm pretty good. I have another superpower, which is estimating the right size container for leftovers. I can usually look at the pot that's got leftovers in it and work out the exact right container so that it will just fit. So two little superpowers of mine. One of them is also recognizing colorways and things like that. So anyhow, I am happy to be working on this swatch, and I'll keep reporting back each week as to what I've learned. Right. Oh, one other thing that I just wanted to mention about that. Last week I talked about Paddy's One Move SSK, and I've linked to the video in that, but I think I said that she only showed it or demonstrated knitting continental, so with the yarn in the left hand. But if you watch the video later, Karen mentioned that actually later in the video she does demonstrate it English style, holding the yarn in the right hand. So I don't need to do a video on that. If you're interested in that, go to last week's video. There is a link to her video in there, and if you just go to later in the video, early in the video she demonstrates it continental, later she demonstrates it English. And having said that, I've practiced it a few times, that One Move SSK, and I like it, but I also don't think it's one that I would always use. It kind of almost tilts the stitch to the left a little bit, so it almost looks like a right leaning decrease from the other stitch. So when I get to that, I'll show you my swatches and report my findings. But of course you might want to buy the workbook and try it yourself, but I'll certainly report what I've learnt from my knitting. And I do think that even though I will use that technique, I may not use it everywhere. It'll just depend, and maybe that will be something when I do my swatch. If I know there's a lot of SSKs in it, when I do my swatch for gauge, that's a really good idea. When I do my swatch for gauge, I'll just throw a couple of SSKs in there, maybe on the side because I don't want to mess up my tension or anything. Maybe make a slightly larger one and do a few different SSKs, and I'll probably have to balance with some increases so I don't lose all my stitches. Yes, anyway, that's just a thought. Right. I'm up to, I feel like I've just been talking a lot, but I'm going to do my hardly ever or never worn segment. So in this segment, I just wanted to show you a sweater or usually a garment that I've made that I never wear or have hardly ever worn. And this one is Narragansett by Thea Coleman, and I knit it out of Madelinetosh MCN worsted, which is Merino Cashmere Nylon worsted in the colourway Rambler. So that's the colour. It's actually, it's a beautiful colour. It's sort of a greeny grey colour, and nothing wrong with the pattern at all. I knit this in 2012. It took me about 2 weeks to make. So, because the gauge is pretty large, it's a worsted weight gauge, I used 4 skeins. But I think there's probably a lot of reasons I don't wear it. So it's pretty long. It has a 29-inch bust, so I obviously made it with 3 inches of negative ease. I made the 32-inch size, but my gauge must have been smaller. It has aggressive waist shaping. I think I've got 5 decreases, and so it was already a 29-inch bust, and then I've decreased 5 times, 4 stitches. I've decreased 20 stitches, and then increased again. So a lot of waist shaping. It's 15 inches from under the arms and 17.5 inches for the sleeves. It is a beautiful soft yarn. I love this yarn. It feels great. I had to take my t-shirt off, so I've got this completely next to skin. I had to take the t-shirt off because it was coming up here. It just looked weird. So whatever I would wear this under, it'd have to have a pretty low neckline. So you can see it's sort of a boat neckline. It's got a lovely little detail here on the, but it doesn't continue. So that's a bit odd. It sort of just goes here and then stops. Maybe it did go down the sleeves. I'm going to look that up. Maybe it did go down the sleeves and I just skipped that. I don't know. Because I'm such a stockinette fan. I might have just gone, I don't want to do that. But I do like it. Look how pretty that cable is. And it's got these twisted stitches. So I think some of the reasons that I don't wear this is I don't think this is a great colour for my complexion. I don't think it's horrible, but I just don't think it really, Magnolia Bloom with that purple, I think really sings. I think that is much better for me. That, I don't know, it just looks a bit dead on me. and it's it's too tight. No, it's not too tight, like uncomfortable, but it's just not, like I'm really going for more ease in sweaters, certainly not negative ease for a sweater. Negative ease for a top, maybe, but I'm not into negative ease for a sweater, and certainly not all of this like crazy waist shaping where it basically is, form fitting. I'm not anti that in general, but it's not what I want to wear, right? I want to wear like a storm sweater and Magnolia Bloom, a bit more oversized. It's also quite long, right? 15 inches. This is coming down like practically to my crotch. And I'm not wearing things that long anymore. It is top down, so I could certainly undo and make it shorter, but that doesn't fix the sizing. So, yeah, and I also don't know that neckline particularly is great on me. It also is quite limiting in what I can wear underneath it. You've got this lace here, so you would see like whatever you were wearing underneath. Yeah, and like even if let's say I turned it into a top, I said I don't mind tops having some negative ease. Even if I like ripped back the sleeves to here, I'm thinking about this now, and I don't know, the color, right? Like, I don't know. But what happens is, like, there's nothing inherently awfully wrong with it, but I just have other things I like more. But of course I soldiered on and finished it, didn't I? Because I was, I finished stuff. But yeah, I'm not sure who would want this. And I think the color, I reckon this color would probably be really nice, maybe with a mohair with it. Anyway, it is a bit sad. It's a bit sad that such a lovely yarn is, when did I make it? 2012, right? 12 years ago. And I don't know that I've worn it. I actually had 5 skeins of this and I only used 4. And I used the leftover skein to make a pair of socks for my dad. And that got worn, and I think I actually even have, I have them now because all of his socks ended up going in the washer and the dryer. And they shrunk. So they actually now, even though this is like superwash, I think eventually, like if you put something, in hardcore in a dryer, it's eventually going to felt and shrink, which it did. But that means it fits me now. So they used to be my dad's, and I wear all his old socks that I made him because they fit me now, and I feel very, I will show you them one day too, actually. So I'll show you these ones. So they're kind of felted. They're nothing beautiful to look at, but they make me happy when I wear them. Yep. So anyway, this one, I just think, what do I do with it? Do I give it away? Does anyone want it? Do I give it away to someone to unravel the yarn? One thing I was thinking about, and then I'll finish, and we're almost at the end of the this episode. The one thing I was thinking about is at my school, there's a lady who runs at the start of the year. She runs like a bring in garments or, clothes or whatever that you're not wearing anymore. And they put, and they actually like sell them, like people buy them and then they donate money to, to like a sponsor child or something, that sort of an organization that at our school, I won't say her name, but there was a girl that we're supporting with her education and everything. So yeah, so I'm just thinking maybe I could put these together and include them. Maybe somebody would like them, or maybe there's just something inherently wrong with them and it would only be another knitter who would want to take it to unravel it. So I watched this podcast. I've mentioned her before, Sherry from Good Knits. She just did a podcast recently where she talked about projects that she had made, and some she just didn't love, and she was happy to give away to people if they wanted to unravel the yarn, because she didn't really want to unravel the yarn, or they might like it, or they might want it for the yarn. And so maybe that's what I'll end up doing. Maybe once I've I wouldn't want to have to keep sending stuff to people, but maybe once I've done all of these, I could put like here is all of them, does anybody want any of them? And you could message me and I could send them to you. Like, I don't want any money for it. It would just be like but postage can be a killer, right? So if it might still be expensive to send to the US, or depending on, or to the Europe or wherever. Anyway, that's enough on that. It's a bit of a shame. It feels so nice on my body. Like, I'm really enjoying wearing it. It feels nice. Sometimes I don't know, but there's this maybe short sleeves, because it can't be, like, it's problematic with the neckline with wearing something underneath it. So I'm thinking about this because it was top down. I'm thinking maybe I could... what would I do with the leftovers? Doesn't matter. Like, it'd be better to be wearing this at all than not wearing it at all. There would be a bit of re-knitting to do, though, because I'd have to pull this up to here and at least re-knit a band. I'm curious to see. What do you think? Is this like... Does this have any value as a short sleeve top, or just... Nah, no one would want it. Anyway, something to think about. Right. Oh, I do have one more segment before I get onto the personal stuff. The last little thing is tips. And I've already mentioned a few tips. The yarn forward tip that I think it was... who was it? It was Danny who suggested that. Just a reminder about using the yarn forward technique when you're alternating yarn. You have to do that every row, but yeah, it works pretty well. The other tip that I wanted to mention, Michelle said something when I was talking about podcasts in other languages. You can actually, I don't know if you guys know this, I didn't. When you click on the CC for subtitles, it will automatically do, if the person has activated that, I think it will automatically do subtitles, I think, in their language. But then if you go to the settings wheel, you can click on that and you can choose to change the subtitles to whatever language you want it to be in. So yeah, so Michelle mentioned that, so I thought that might be helpful for someone particularly if there's a podcaster you'd like to watch, but you don't understand anything about or you don't have any knowledge of the language that they speak. So yeah, that's a thought. Or if like maybe if you have a lot of podcasters that are in English and you're struggling to understand a particular section of what they're saying, you could... Now, I don't know how good these subtitles are, like how good the translation is, but, maybe better than nothing. And particularly for something like knitting where you've got a lot of jargon and specific language, it may lose a bit in translation, but there might be something in there. And the other tip that I wanted to mention was when I showed the champagne cardigan, and I mentioned that during the button band, you had to cut the yarn when you got to certain sections of the button band. Brenda mentioned that Florence, I'll put a link to her podcast down below. Florence has a tutorial for a double knit button band where you don't have to cut the yarn at the buttonholes. So whatever technique she uses, you don't have to cut the yarn at the buttonholes. I haven't looked at that yet, but that did sound interesting to me because obviously less ends to weave in and just always, again, new techniques that might be interesting or you might want to use for a particular project. It might work for one but not for another, but yeah, always good, always happy to learn. Right, I think that might be it. Sorry if I've gone on too long. I guess you can always turn me off whenever or watch the second half later. The only other one last little thing I wanted to mention is one of my viewers, Janice, commented. She said that she is going on a craft cruise. This is probably too because I forgot to mention it last week. Too close for anyone to join, but she's going on a craft cruise. It's called Craft Cruises 14-day Iberian Knitting Cruise from the 7th of September to the 21st of September. And yeah, they're going, I think, where are they going? They're boarding at Amsterdam and sailing down the English Channel with spots at Spanish and Portuguese ports around the Straits of Gibraltar to Rome. And they're touring in Italy and the UK after the cruise. There's a group of them. And that she said the total holiday is from the 1st, so they must have already gone, 1st of September to the 16th of October, a bunch of friends. And I just thought, how good is, like, I'd love to do more of this. Like, my season at the moment in life, I'm still working quite a bit, but I would like to start doing more of this sort of stuff. I'm almost up for long service leave, and so I'm starting to, like, as a high school teacher, I'm normally quite limited by school holidays, and a lot of these things are out of school holidays. But when you get long service leave, you get substantial amount of leave that you can take outside of school holidays. So next year, I'm sort of blending into personal stuff now, but I just thought I'd mention this. Next year, my son is doing his HSCs in Year 12, so I won't be going anywhere that year. And I also have Year 12 classes that year, and it's quite tricky to leave your Year 12 classes when they're in their big year. But then the year after that, 2026, when he's finished, I'm thinking I might start, like, I'm really keeping my eyes out for those sorts of, and Beck and I are planning on going somewhere, whether it's my friend Beck, who's been on this podcast before, will either go to Rhinebeck or we'll do another, maybe a Myak retreat or something that's sort of, I didn't do anything big for my 50th. And yeah, I'd really, like, that's just an excuse though, really. I'm kind of thinking I'd like to start to do more of those sorts of things. So I guess that's kind of knitting related. If you haven't already been on a retreat, retreats are fantastic. Whatever they are, they could be just like a small little weekend one. They could be a big, long, couple of weeks on a cruise, anything in between. But yeah, it's fun. It's just fun to be around other crafters and just having that time, that dedicated knitting time. Right, I think that's it for the craft stuff. I'm going to thank you so much for watching. I'm going to just move into my personal stuff now, which will be quite short, and then and then I'll edit this. Right, so personal stuff. I am almost finished lessons in chemistry. That I've been listening to that on. I've read like the first sort of chunk of it, and then I've been listening to the rest of it on audiobook. It is quite good. I've got an hour left. I think I only had 2 hours left last week, but I've been going on walks either with friends or chatting with friends, so I've only had an hour of listening to that, so I've got 1 more hour to go, so I reckon I'll finish that this week. And then now it's a different day in the US, but we had Father's Day last Sunday, so last weekend. So I've got 3 kids, and on Saturday night we played Mario Party with 2 of them, with me and my husband, and so we're a big games family. And then I made choc chip and pecan waffles in the morning for breakfast, and then we played Ticket to Ride, which is something we used to play with my dad, so that was quite special. And and I made like a slow cooked Mexican pork for dinner, so some burritos, so that was a really lovely. I think my husband had a really good Father's Day. The kids wrote really beautiful cards for him, which I think is some of the most special stuff when you read that kind of stuff, where your kids just tell you they appreciate you, which is lovely. I think he had a really good day. And the only other thing that I was going to mention that we were going to do tonight, and I was so excited, was almost our whole family, except for Alex because she wasn't that keen. We were going to go to Catfish and the Bottlemen, a concert at the Hordern Pavilion tonight, but they've cancelled. So they actually cancelled a concert maybe about 4 or 5 days ago in Dublin. And very last minute, like in the 10 minutes before they were meant to go on, they cancelled. One of the band members was ill, and now they've cancelled the whole Australian tour. They haven't explained who's ill or why, so it must be something quite serious. You don't cancel a whole international tour with all of the organisation that would go into that for nothing. So we're obviously all really personally disappointed, because we've been listening to the music, and my son and I were cooking dinner last night with the music turned up loud and singing along, and so excited about going tonight. So it's disappointing for us as just concert goers, but I just think how bad things must be for one of them to have to cancel the whole tour. So yeah, I'll be keeping them in my prayers. Hopefully they're okay, and hopefully we'll get to see them again one day. But clearly if something's that seriously up, they need to get well. So that's it for my personal stuff this week ahead. Actually, there's one other thing that I'll mention. There's the guild meeting is the first Saturday of every month, and my local guild meeting is, at least my local guild meeting is the first Saturday of the month. And I'm hoping to go this Saturday, because I after the last guild retreat, I was like, I really want to get back there, but I also need to buy another car. So my husband's car did get, I think I mentioned, they did find it, and but it was written off. So they've given us the money for it, and we have to purchase another car. So I might end up, instead of going to the guild meeting, I might have to go car shopping, which isn't like, it sounds like such a nice thing to do, but I just want a car that goes and doesn't break down, and like I don't like the learning curve with a new car. So anyway, but I think my husband would be quite excited about doing it, so maybe we'll do that together. And yeah, so I'll either go to the guild retreat, or I think I might actually have to go look at cars. So that's okay. Like, doesn't that sounds so silly? Like I should be I'm really grateful that we have the money to buy a new one, but I guess it's just not something that is inherently exciting for me. I will be happy to have a car that, obviously a car that works and stuff, but I would have just loved to have his one back. So anyway, but that's not possible. So think that's what I'm doing this weekend. All right, that's enough. I will see you next week. Bye.